Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating vulnerability right at the heart of East African commerce. We're going to dive deep into the expert strategies that are absolutely crucial if you want to secure generational wealth. So let's start things off with a pretty fundamental question. Who really drives Uganda's economic growth? Now, I know it's super easy to picture massive multinational corporations or huge state-run industries, right? But to find the true engine of the economy, we actually have to look a lot closer to home. We need to look at families. Because the dominance of these family businesses, it is absolutely staggering. Get this, they account for over 60% of all enterprises in Uganda, and they contribute more than 70% to the national GDP. That is massive. They are the undeniable backbone of the entire economy. They're providing jobs, driving innovation, and literally fueling the day-to-day hustle. But here is where we hit a really jarring reality. This is the paradox we're exploring today. Despite generating over 70% of the GDP, fewer than 10% of these incredible enterprises survive beyond the founding entrepreneur. Just think about that for a second. More than 90% of the wealth, the knowledge, the capacity built by these founders effectively evaporates the moment it's time to pass the torch. This stark contrast between having immense economic power on one hand and extreme fragility on the other is what's known as the family business paradox. And it was the absolute focus of the recent Njovu Family Business Breakfast. Organized in partnership with I&M Bank, experts gathered to tackle this exact issue. Because, well, without deliberate intervention, the default trajectory for a family business is unfortunately failure. So how do we fix this crazy failure rate? Experts at the event suggested a brilliant conceptual shift. We need to stop viewing a business like a machine and start viewing it like a tree. And a tree that's built to last absolutely must begin with strong, unshakable roots. You simply can't focus on the fruit or the branches until the system anchoring that tree to the ground is entirely secure. A Wikitibor Robert Wagwa laid out exactly what these roots look like. He said they are land, family, faith, and reputation. See, true wealth preservation only happens when a family can compound these foundational elements over time. It's not just about piling up cash in a bank account, it's recognizing that without being anchored in these core values, a successful enterprise can get blown over by the slightest breeze. Okay, so practically, how do you protect what you've built? You've got to follow a strict, very deliberate sequence. Step 1, secure the base with insurance and wills. Step 2, build rigorous governance structures. Only after those two protective layers are completely locked in should you ever look at step 3, which is pursuing new growth. I mean, you literally cannot build the penthouse before you've poured the concrete foundation, right? Of course, even a tree with incredibly deep roots can be ripped up by an unexpected, violent storm. And that brings us to what we call the liquidity lifeline. You know, you might be incredibly wealthy on paper, but if all that wealth is tied up in illiquid assets, we're talking massive tracts of undeveloped land or heavy factory equipment, you have a severe vulnerability. You could be land rich, but totally cash poor the second a crisis hits. Kenneth Makanga from BDO East Africa summed this up perfectly. He said you can project and plan very well, but circumstances can happen. And to prove it, he pointed to the COVID-19 pandemic as the ultimate stress test. Even incredibly wealthy families faced existential threats during those lockdowns, simply because they couldn't convert their physical assets to cash when the economy just paused. This perfectly highlights why diversification isn't just about making more money. It's actually about survival. You need investments that offer flexibility to access cash during an emergency. Makanga's crucial takeaway here is that you have to maintain specific investments purely for liquidity. When circumstances abruptly change, immediate cash acts as your financial shock absorber. Now, moving up from the roots to protect the trunk of this growing family tree, you need legal armor. And you've got to build this armor before disputes or incapacity strike. Waiting for a tragedy to expose the weaknesses in a handshake agreement? Yeah, that's a recipe for total disaster. You have to transform a loose family operation into a hardened, formalized corporate entity. Counsel Sophia Nampija was very clear on this. She urged families to draw a hard line in the sand. You must visually and legally separate personal assets from corporate structures. Utilize tools like family trusts to manage and distribute wealth. Because if you don't do this early on, you are practically inviting the exact kind of internal chaos that tears families and their life's work apart when a founder passes away. So, to turn all this theory into reality, institutions are really stepping up. Edward Gibson Ngono detailed how I&M Bank is moving way beyond traditional banking to provide tailored wealth preservation solutions. Through I&M Capital, they're offering specialized wealth management. And through I&M Burbage Capital, they're actually helping family-led businesses access strategic equity partners. That means unlocking growth without the family losing control of the whole shebang. So, with the roots established, the trunk armored, and liquidity completely secured, a family enterprise can finally look outward to the branches. And Uganda is bursting with emerging opportunities right now in sectors like oil and gas. Entrepreneurs absolutely should be ambitious. But as Owakatibu Nasibra cautioned, that ambition has to be equally matched with intense preparation against market risks. This naturally leads us to diversification. But listen, branching out is not a sign that you've lost confidence in the original family business. Actually, it's a necessary wealth protection strategy. It's especially vital because as new generations take the reins, they are inevitably going to bring different perspectives and passions regarding how that family wealth should be managed. Ultimately, passing the seeds of a thriving enterprise to the next generation requires immense intentionality. But here is some incredibly encouraging news. Elizabeth Kibuka pointed out that some Ugandan enterprises are already successfully operating in their third generation. It proves unequivocally that longevity is totally achievable. You just have to prepare for it. Annette Nakiaga provided this powerful sentiment that perfectly anchors our whole explainer today. She noted that a business isn't just a balance sheet, it's the physical manifestation of a family's legacy. Deliberate succession planning, combined with that solid legal structuring we talked about, is literally the only way to ensure the people, the values, and the wealth structures you leave behind actually outlive the founder. So as you reflect on the deep roots and the structures of your own career or enterprise, we want to leave you with this final thought. Are you just operating a business to extract today's returns, or are you intentionally engineering an unshakable legacy for tomorrow? Thanks for joining us on this explainer. We'll see you next time.